There are moments in sport that don't just change a match, they alter how a person sees everything that comes after. For Roman Kemp, who grew up with Arsenal stitched into the fabric of his family life, that moment arrived like a thunderclap. One goal, one burst of commentary on the radio, and a flood of feelings so intense, he later admits he nearly stopped supporting the club he'd loved since childhood. He's not a professional pundit in that memory, he's a child on the sofa, a son whose family identity is wrapped up in red and white. He remembers the noise of the room, the silence that followed the strike, and the small domestic earthquake that followed. His father, Martin, a man of few public surprises, refusing to speak to him for days because in the heat of the moment, Roman swore he couldn't stand to watch Arsenal again. That's the power of a single football moment. It can fracture the simplest domestic certainties, rearrange loyalties, and leave scars that look stubbornly like memory. The strike itself, brilliant, agonizing for the other side, immortal to anyone who watched or listened, carries another life inside it now, because it is wound into the story Roman tells about who he is, how he loved, and how he learned to keep loving after the sting. As he reflects on it today, he no longer sees only the pain. He sees the context, a fierce rivalry played out in stadiums and living rooms across a generation, a catalogue of highs and lows that makes the loyalty worth keeping. He recognizes, too, that those 3 days of silence at home were not mere petulance or pride. They were part of the ritual of being a fan, the private negotiations that follow public defeat. There's a universality to it. Millions of fans remember the match as a headline, but a handful remember how their kitchens and cars and friendships were rearranged by what happened on the pitch. That duality, public spectacle and private heartbreak, is where Roman's story becomes compelling beyond one celebrity anecdote. It teaches us that fandom is not just about celebrations and trophies, it is about the work of returning. It's about sitting through replays that hurt, explaining to friends why you still believe, and accepting that some images will always sting when they resurface on a highlights reel. Roman's honesty about crying, about the awkward silence with his dad, and about the way that lone goal can still make him wince, gives the moment weight, but the story doesn't end with that flare of pain. Over time, the raw cut of that goal softened into a scar that proved a point. Loyalty survives, sometimes because of the hurt, not in spite of it. Roman found himself coming back to the club that shaped him, not as someone naive to defeats, but as someone who had been tested and chose to stay. That arc, from meltdown to renewed allegiance, mirrors the experience of countless fans who felt a season or a match or a single shot threaten to end their love, only to discover that what looks like loss is often the prelude to a deeper connection. In telling the tale now, Roman does more than recount a painful memory. He captures a truth about football and identity. Rivalries give our stories texture, and the moments that wound us are the same ones that, years later, we tell with the kind of laugh that says, "I still love you." The goal remains in highlight reels and history books, but for Roman and fans like him, it has a private soundtrack. A small kitchen, a father's cold shoulder for 3 nights, and the tremor of a child who learned what it means to stand by something through the worst. Ugh. That is the human side of sport, not only glory and headlines, but the tiny domestic bargains that make support a lived, sometimes painful, always meaningful choice.